Alright, I kind of wanted to go over what I'm working on right now. What this is here is it's an XML file that the start layout command export start layout path. We'll say home desktop start layout.xml. Now, I don't like how it autofills that, but I guess whatevs. One thing I'd like to note is that you can leave that outside of quotes or not. It doesn't really matter too much, but when you put it in quotes, you know that you're getting a literal path rather than taking a chance on the variable being correct or not. But home is an environment variable for the current user. So, but that exports this file right here, and then I opened it, which is this right here. So when I see this, I kind of want to. I'm trying to use the commandlet that I made to create this stuff like automatically, and you can also. You can also add in what? That's not correct. I really hope it isn't. Well, that sucks. I had a layout modification. I had a layout modification that changed the stuff on the taskbar too, and that seems to be a little harder to research. Taskbar layout XML. So to configure the Windows 10 taskbar, you can use something like the image and configuration designer, and what that does is it kind of, I guess it's kind of group policy in a way, but more to it than that. It also, rather than everything comes down to the registry. So, like all these commands here, they tell the registry, hey, put this program here or whatever. So when I click on this, this is the default layout here, but if I wanted to modify it, or say resize, say small, I can do that just by doing that. But I could also edit the registry and it'll do that too. So that's what that is doing actually when I do that. That GUI is telling the registry, hey, do that. And then every component says, okay, we'll make that twice as large. Or, well, I guess I'm going from 1 to 4. But anyway, what I was getting at is this. This right here, all this stuff, it's an XML file. So if I wanted to add stuff to the taskbar, I'd have to have programs installed first correctly before I can apply this. Because if I apply it first and then install the program, it may work, but chances are that it won't, because it will. It's kind of like I don't know, flushing your key down the toilet and then driving your car somewhere, and then you realize when you get to your car, you're like, wait a second, I just flushed the key down the toilet. That's not the exact analogy, but I guess it's similar. It's like you kind of need to have something done first before you can try to modify this start layout. And I believe that you actually have to reboot the computer in order for the layout to apply itself, or at least log out and then log back in, which I exhibited that in a video I did back in May. All the stuff that I did in the video back in May, in order to have a bit of consistency and control over the security aspect of all these programs that get installed, you got to have an understanding of how these XML markup languages work. and how to build them dynamically. So like you could use the commandlet. That's no big deal. You could use the default commandlet to output the default layout and stuff. But what I find is that when oh yeah, actually this is it's missing the taskbar stuff, but this is the same layout that I had then, sort of. Google Chrome, CCleaner, K-Lite, 7-zip, Malwarebytes, TeamViewer. I might take that off because I'm not too happy with these people at all. But that's a side point. What I'd really like to talk about is the difference between a desktop application tile and a app user model ID. So what this is right here is it's an AppX protocol or string. What it is, it's saying, hey, go into the Microsoft Windows library under Security Health User Interface, and then that's it's sort of like a DCOM reference, but it's not DCOM. It's it's kind of like a password or something of that nature. It says, hey, look, this unique string here, go look for that. And the operating system has that buried within like DCOM and assemblies and things of that nature. But you know, I think they were trying to make it so that it was secure and easily editable, which for the most part I think they've done. The problem seems to be like if you want to do this and customize it, you can use ICD, which, you know, ICD is a free program, I think. Pretty sure it is. I'm pretty sure I could install it if I wanted to, and then, you know, edit it and stuff. But, you know, it kind of falls on group policy, whether you're able to distribute a modification template or not. So what I mean is that you have to go into group policy. So GP edit MSC. So this is group policy right here, and it's not too dissimilar from the registry, where things here are a little bit more cryptic, and, you know, unless you happen to be an engineer that knows what the hell IME, Common, API, like, you can kind of, if you've been doing this for a while, you can figure out this application presentation interface. But the rest of it's kind of like IME. I think that's like symbol, the characters that show up on the screen. I think that's what IME is. But anyway, side point. This local group policy stuff, software settings, Windows settings, policy-based quality of service, security settings. So a lot of group policies hinder on this stuff right here, and this directly changes stuff in the registry. So, like if I go into password policy, and this is the default policy until you apply a global group policy template or a scoped group policy template. Enforce password history. So it says 0 passwords remembered, which means that's like you could use the same password over and over and over and over and over, and it won't change anything. So that means that like if you have the same password for 30 days or 42 days, which is what this says here, after that 42 days it'll ask you to change the password, but only if this policy is enforced, which I think by default the settings are rather relaxed, but they have to be tightened enough to kind of, I don't know. This is a security operating. This is a server operating system, so like servers like are meant to be more secure. So like you could develop applications for a desktop operating system all day long. If they don't work so well on the server side, then guess how easy it is to break things. It's pretty easy. if you can make something that works on both the desktop side and the server side, then you can start to use these group policies to kind of shape where things go, so that you don't have to put too much thought into where you want to install programs on each client's machine in a corporation, or on each client's machine if you're just a business servicing individuals. ICD is a good way to kind of not have to deal with the registry or group policy, but the problem with ICD is that there's nothing inherently wrong with ICD. I think that PowerShell is a much more efficient tool to be able to change what may be needed or what may not be needed. So, like, let me go ahead and install ICD actually. Oh, I must have. Oh no, I don't have the ADK installed on here right now. But Configuration Designer comes with the ADK, which my tool Hybrid does install the ADK, but I don't think it includes the Configuration Designer. But let's say, like, you wanted all these settings to be saved to a script so that you had consistency. So if you had to install Windows ADK at forward servers, you could check these boxes without actually having to check them, because you're feeding it a script or a configuration, which is sort of like configuring the configuration tool to work automatically. The tool that I use, or the tool that I have developed to install this automatically, it just uses switches, which the switches themselves are a pain in the ass to figure out, because they're not all the same. If it's an MSI exec program, then it's easier to use, like, so if a good application engineer decides to use MSI exec, which fits one, that makes things a lot easier to manage, then you have these default parameters and switches. Not all programs will have all of these switches, but you could automate the process of installing and uninstalling, removing or changing or what have you, from MSI exec. Not so much the case with like a regular compiled program like what you would make with C++. We're actually, case in point here, 7-zip. So I'm going to jump into my jump into this. I have a command that looks through installed programs, so I'm going to pull that up. Alright, I don't want it to do that, but let's see here. Okay, so this will look through hold on a second. What did I do before? Alright, so case in point here, 7-zip is a program. It's command line based and not exactly PowerShell friendly. But here's the problem with these switches, is that if the switch itself, A, actually said add files instead of A, and what you can do is just, look through the commands. So like IntelliSense comes up, and then you can see all these other commands here that start with start. If I were to go into start bits transfer, let's say that, and then I add in that minus, then it pulls up all these parameters, and all these parameters, they have a different role. Some of them are critical, some of them aren't. But let's say that the distributor of 7-zip, created an interface for the program here, which is essentially what a lot of commandlets do. It's they touch on an actual compiled program and then add. They change that switch to like add files, or let's say I was like, it's collect archive. Excuse me. Collect archive, and then I want to say like add files, or add would just open up another table, and then I'd say file, and the file would be, I don't know, file, and then I wanted to do something else, so I say add file, and then save or export name test file 7-zip, I guess. You can make a switch that says whether it's going to be 7-zip or not. I guess you could do that too. But then also, let's say password, and then you type in a password, and then let's say you want to set the compression algorithm. Compression maximum. So that's kind of like what DISM does, is that right there for 7-zip. I don't think that DISM is 7-zip, but they work in a relatively similar manner. Whereas 7-zip is command line based, or like a DOS output base. DISM is a bit more PowerShell based, or I'm not really sure where I'm going with this explanation here, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to like switching and knowing how to automate things, it becomes a real pain in the neck to have to do research into how many different options you have available when you're trying to run an application. But when it's like a commandlet, you actually get like self-help, or like the commandlet itself provides information on how to use it. And I realize that a lot of my commandlets, they need some more comment-based help so that people know how to use them or know what the program does. But I haven't really gotten to that point, because here's the thing. If I were to take my whole script here, right, and then I added all the comment-based help, and then, hey, something I didn't test thoroughly doesn't work, so then I have to like tear it all apart and then rebuild it and then retype all the comment-based help or whatever. What happens is you have to change like everything that you worked on, and that is a pain in the neck, because there's nothing quite like having to redo the same work over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And the point of programming is so that you don't have to do the same work over and over and over without putting too much thought to it. So as things evolve and more things are developed and come into the world and change things, what you're left with is there's a lot of things that do the same things. And there are some solutions that are expensive that don't work or fail to work correctly. And those things, I feel like that's a tragedy or a missed opportunity when something you pay for didn't do its job, and then, you know, some people may not be smart enough to say, hey, the software you sold me didn't work, so I would like a refund. Good luck. Not all companies will honor that, and that's unfortunate because, you know, I don't think that that's good business, but that's how a lot of business is done. And unfortunately, you know, it's come to the point where I had to study application development and study security engineering and find a way to concatenate the two. And not the easiest thing in the world to do. I'm sure some people that have been doing this for a while feel like my efforts are invalidating their work. So I try to make an effort to understand things to the point where, you know, I've gone through several layers of feeling as if everything I was working on was kind of a waste of time. But you know what? That's not to say that it has been. It just feels like it because you get to a point where people take advantage or like expect things to work out of the gate. And it sucks that the world has come to that, because what you miss out by expecting things to work is understanding how they work. And when a company like Norton will release a program that's supposed to protect them from viruses, but it doesn't protect them from clever exploits on the internet, well, then you have to have two different programs to kind of put things in the same similar scope, which is unfortunate because there should only be one product that does that, right? Like, am I wrong for saying that? I'm sure I might be upsetting people at Norton when I say this, but I feel as if your program I feel as if it's a waste of money if you have to, charge for each individual component of a program that's supposed to be fully complete to begin with. So, like, internet security and antivirus and anti-malware and encryption and ransomware protection. If you're paying somebody to provide a service, right? If it's an antivirus service, it should do more than just antivirus, right? And you shouldn't charge more money for providing a service that should have already been included with the antivirus to begin with. So I realize that there's other ways to scam and trick people. And that's the sad state of the world that we live in right now, is that, it's pretty easy for me to receive an email from some random guy I've never met. And, cool. For me to receive an email from some guy that I never met, click on the email, and then not realize that by clicking on that email, I just got hacked. Or I clicked on a link that, put something on my machine that allowed somebody somewhere else to see everything that I'm doing, which is how this work that I do is exceptionally difficult, frustrating, challenging, and drives experts insane. We put it that way. If you're paying Norton to protect you, but you somehow get hacked through Gmail, well, whose fault is that? Is it Gmail's or is it Norton's? Is it a shared liability between the two? Do you take them both to court if some hacker swindles you out of $40,000? Well, the answer is no. You don't do either one of those things. In today's age, what happens is you take that and you walk away with it, and you can't do anything about it. And people get to say things like, it was your own damn fault for opening that email. Oh, right. So here's where all of my efforts start to make sense to anybody that was wondering why I have to be... I'm not going to say any bad words here, but when I get frustrated to the point where I have to insult people or tell them that they're bad at their job, it's not because I think that they're bad at their job. It's more of the thing. It's more to say, hey, look, your job is pointless if you made this thing and it didn't work, right? So that's why I've been building this program. I'm trying to make it freely available because there's a lot of things in this world that are messed up, and there are some clever people out there that know how to install exploits on your machine without you knowing about it. And one of those companies I'd like to suggest that does such a thing would happen to be AVG. Now, AVG isn't a bad company. They've been around for a long time. But when they start to include things like I'm trying to find a picture that shows all the features that they have. They have a part of their program that does driver updating, and maybe this will show. No, it doesn't. So look, you look at this here, and yeah, this is all good to have, but I'm starting to think that this whole screen here could very easily be one button, right? If you need like 10 different tabs and then have more from AVG, and then let's say you're an AVG fanatic and you buy everything that AVG comes out with, not just the antivirus, but the driver updater, the firewall protection, the antivirus, the anti-malware, the web browsing. It starts to be pretty easy for a company to gloss over the fact that their product failed, and when you demand a refund from these people because you got scammed out of $40,000, not only do they not refund you, but then they say that it's your own damn fault. Sure. So if you want to masquerade as a security company and your product fails, what happens is that you should no longer be in business. Case in point, ASUS, a company that developed the laptop that I've been developing all of this on. It's going to be exceptionally difficult for me to make this point here, but this is a BIOS that got installed for my machine back in like May or April. And Windows Update put this on here. Like, it said, hey, you've got this BIOS that could be installed. So I went ahead and did it because, as much as I go back and forth about how much I trust Microsoft, I know that there's someone that works there that's been helping me this whole time. The Windows Update utility installed the BIOS, but it was the incorrect one. And I'll make this case right now while I have the video recording. So I'll go to Intel.com and I will go to download the chipset driver for this machine. It's an Intel 520. And I'll open up the device manager. So you can see Intel HD Graphics 520. And I have these unknown devices here. I know which one that is. That's the wireless card. And then these two, they won't install for whatever reason. Even though my Bluetooth is enabled. See? Weird, right? That my Bluetooth is enabled. And that this is saying unknown device. So that's how I know that Intel is involved in this, or ASUS is. Let me go into DCH drivers. Not entirely sure why there's two different versions of this. It's not explained here. But I'll download them. Oh, it's an exe and a zip. So I'm going to download the exe. Now I'll show you that this processor is on this list here. i5 6200U. 6200U. So it says 2.3 gigahertz. But it's a 2.8 gigahertz CPU. So that's how I know that the firmware is incorrect. Not necessarily because of the gigahertz, but because if Windows is reporting 2.3 gigahertz and it says that it's a 2.8 gigahertz processor, and that means that it's downclocked. Or maybe that's a turbo boost, the 2800, or the, I don't know. Getting a little trivial with the tangent. But anyway, it's on my computer now. I can show the folder, and I'm going to run it. Now here's what you'll see. Takes a minute to load. Now, it should have already loaded. Starts to make you wonder, like, what's going on if it hasn't loaded yet. It shouldn't take that long to load. That's how I know that the firmware is hacked or it's the incorrect one. Especially when it says, this installation package is not supported by this processor type. Oh, well, that's weird because the Intel website says that right here. i5 6200U processor, 3 megabytes cache, up to 2.8 gigahertz. So I guess that's the turbo. But yeah, I mean, when you see an error that says the installation package is not supported by this processor type, well, what that means is that the the manufacturers for my laptop are incompetent and don't know how to do their job. And what I mean by that is this. I will show you the email. Where the hell is it? So like 2 months ago I opened up this ticket. I said, hey, look, you people seem to want to have this conversation with me that goes on for months, that you don't know how to do your jobs. If you did, you'd send me the updated BIOS because you installed the incorrect version. Now, try not to read any of that because I have been losing my patience with these people. Trying to find, okay. So I have a video on my phone that shows from August 4th when they had version 3.01 for the Q504UA on the website. And this one right here, the version 3.01, this is for the UX560UA. Now, the video shows that I downloaded it straight from ASUS. And it shows that when I open that archive, it says UX56UA. Don't ask me how it's reporting in here. Hang on a second. So the SIM is reporting that it's a Q504UA, but if it was, then why would the driver not be installable? And then also, this right here, I took this picture on August 30th. You can see that they removed the other one because I expanded. This is the full window here. It's missing the version that's supposed to be there, or the version that got installed to my machine. So what I'm explaining to you is that somebody at ASUS could very easily have uploaded the incorrect model to the Q504UA, and then not notice that they made that error, because people don't commonly install updated firmware unless, of course, you're someone like me. And then when someone like me tells them, hey, look, you should probably release a new version of the BIOS. And I don't want to focus too much on negativity here, because I have a tendency to get pretty upset with people when they try to, avoid not paying, or avoid not trying to scam me into sending my laptop in for service when I'm a CompTIA A Plus and Network Plus certified technician. I've also studied the Security Plus curriculum. I'm a Microsoft certified desktop support technician and professional. I did also study the Microsoft certified security engineering and system administration tracks. But what happened was I had children, and I became disillusioned when a company known as Infrastructure fired me for telling my manager how to do their job correctly. So as you can see, I no longer work for that company, and things have evolved, and I was disillusioned after I had gotten terminated for no reason that was specified whatsoever. So when all these things happen, you kind of get thrown off of whatever trajectory you were originally planning on going down. And when people that own companies make the wrong decision, or they don't see the fact that for every day that I worked at that company, I managed all of the computers for the Adidas Reebok Corporation of North America. I was under a service level agreement to fulfill any repair within 48 hours, have it shipped out. And I did this for about 3 months straight. 2 or 3 months straight, no questions asked. I called HP, they would send a replacement part. I called Dell, they would send the replacement part. And all these parts were sent for free because these machines were under warranty. However, in some instances, the machines weren't under warranty, and my boss would tell me, hey, look, if it's not under warranty, find another machine that is under warranty and use that code, which that's illegal. And I know that HP and Dell would be very upset to know that that's what this company does, or at least they were instructing me to do. So when HP started asking me for some kind of vendor code, because the company employs a lot more than 500 people, I would have to enter that into the voice prompt, and then the person that I would speak to, eventually they started saying, hey, what's your vendor code? And I was never given that vendor code. I was never told what it was. I was never told that I would need it. So, of course, HP, doing their job and everything, they're like, well, I can't send this out because guess what? I need that vendor code. So, told my manager at the time, my project manager was Matthew Caldwell. I won't go into details about how I feel about him. And then my operations manager was Dennis Schilling. And Dennis was a pretty strict guy. He didn't really ask for a lot. He said, hey, make sure you do your job within 48 hours and we won't have problems. And sure enough, the one time where I didn't have the information I needed to fulfill my contract, he had a problem with that. You're yelling at me to do my job, but I need the information in order to do my job. So
can you get me that information? And I asked these people for like, a couple days straight. And then I had to start like, using, entering in the invalid information on the voice prompt so that it would bypass that part. But unfortunately, that's not truthful, and it's also not legal. If you're a company that's of 500 people or more, and I have to type in 1 to 100 or whatever, that should be considered a felony when you enter in incorrect information and then you expect these vendors to send out things for free to honor a warranty. I don't know if it's totally illegal, but I would say it's highly unethical to do that to these companies, especially when you're spending a lot of money with them, and they should already have given you that information. So like, basically what I was saying is, hey, one of my managers needs to call that company and get the information that I need in order to fulfill my SLA. And I asked everybody. Nobody cared. Nobody was able to understand the fact that, hey, you hired me to do a job and I can't do it because guess what? I need that information that you're supposed to provide me so that I can, do my job. And I sent an email and I explained my frustrations with the owner of the company. I included him on the email because I knew that the managers that I worked with were ignoring me, or at least, taking their sweet time to give me the information I needed. Suffice to say, like, that experience kind of ruined things for me over the last, 10 years, for me to circle around back to reinvesting my time into studying and researching all this. Because guess what? When a bunch of people don't care and they get paid a lot of money to not care about your problems, well, what happens is eventually somebody hacks you or steals money from you and you don't even know that it happened. The only way that you find out is well after the fact that somebody swindled you into paying for a service that didn't do its job. And you could tell people and swear up and down that this big company worth billions of dollars let you down and swindled you and took all of your money, and you could tell people and show people proof, and people will still think that you're nuts. People will still think that you're crazy when you actually get pissed off enough to say, hey, look, and you start calling people idiots until they listen. Well, what happens is you might alienate some people, but the people that actually do care, that actually run these companies, they care a lot about what your frustrations are. Unfortunately, you have to go over the heads of people that might be your manager or might be talking to you on the phone. If you call Spectrum and you say, hey, look, I need to talk to somebody that knows the IPv6 address of my the DNS address that I need. Well, what happens is the first level and second level support departments will say, we don't have that information. And then I have to say, look, here's my credentials. Elevate me. Stop wasting my time. And of course, they're told to waste my time because that's what their script tells them to do. However, when I know how those scripts are written that you're reading from, and I provide said keywords to eliminate any time necessary or would be required to explain to you that I know all the answers that you're going to provide me before you even read them. And then also, I know how to write those scripts. So, case in point here. If I call ASUS right now and I say, hey, look, here's my explanation on how you keep trying to sweep something under the rug and trying to make me pay to get this updated BIOS installed on my machine so that I can install the chipset driver, which you've seen in the video that I see an error message. Well, what happens is anyone that watches this video and sees that I know what I'm doing, and I might not know everything, but I know a fair amount to be able to determine when a vendor is trying to charge me $60 to send my machine in when it was their own damn fault. or it was Microsoft Update that pulled that file from ASUS's website and then installed it to my machine, but it was the incorrect BIOS. So I don't know how the incorrect BIOS got installed to my machine, and it's reporting the correct one. But if it was correct, I wouldn't have any problem installing the chipset driver. It's literally that simple. It comes down to that simple fact right there. But that being said, I've gone off on a tangent, and I'm not exactly sure what I started all this with. Oh yeah, this. So this right here is what I wanted to show off. So what you see here is I'm tying this variable to these two environment variables, and it's for each of those. It's going to add the value of that to the beginning of this string here. So when you look at this, and you see this long string of characters here, this is the information that matters. This is the link to the application that you want to use. So I can make the case that all these things happen to start off with a similar thing. If it's not all users profile and then Microsoft Windows start menu programs, etc. Come on, stop. If it's not all users profile, it'll be app data, and then it'll have the same suffix. I guess suffix works here. And you know, if these two lines, the only thing different about them is the fact that it has space ISE, well, you could write it out like that and then be able to exponentially instead of having to write out .lnk for each link, or you know I don't even really know where I'm going with this, but what I'm trying to say is this is splitting that, and then what I wanted to really showcase was this. So this is a really clever way that I discovered to be able to pick from an array to be able to allocate things correctly. So let's say AX. So AX is AU, all users. AX0. If you look here, these were variables I was using. I'm not using them now. But AX0 is that. And then that's going to be AX1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1. So 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1. So what this will do is it'll do that business there, and then forgot how I got this to work before, but for each program, oh, it's synchronized, that's it. Alright, so I'm setting up a synchronized thing here. So I want to get the count of programs, and then I want to get the count of prefix. Oh, I didn't tie it to the variable yet. Alright, so they're both 9. So now I can do this and go 0 to 8. Actually, what I'll do is output equals that, and then for each 0 to 8, what I want to do is concatenate the string for prefix
think that's what I want to do. And then programs. So now, if I hit output, I'll have everything that's down below. But the problem here is that that's an environment variable, so actually I have to put that in there. Yep, that's correct. So if I run through this again, or if I say echo output, So what you see is that I was able to reconstruct all those strings just by you know, looking for common denominators, and anything that was repetitive, I found a way to include it. Feel free to, you know, take a look at it. I'll zoom in so you can kind of read it a little bit better if you can't. But then for each of those items, then I can add in that whole string that's going to be exactly the same except for that. And then, you know, row 0, 0, 0. So 0, 2, 4, and then 2, 2, 2, 0, 2, 4, 4, 4, 4, 0, 2, 4. So that's the grid thing that I was talking about in a previous video. But more to it than all of that, I'm trying to come up with a way to dynamically build all this stuff. So like if I have an applications template that I want to install, then all I have to do is run the application template through, and then output the layout modification, and then it will output to the start menu. And that's that was a tangent that I wanted to discuss. Is that this is a pretty cool little way to do that. I'm sure there's another way to select that, or maybe you know, I could also do this. Declare an array. An empty array, right? And then so I could do that. Oh no, darn it, I wanted to do the prefix. So bam, there you go. Now, here's why you have to declare the array first if you go with this method, is because if I do this, it'll only return one. It'll return the last one. See? So it'll return the last one rather than all of them. So that's why if you're going to do it that way, then you want to have that, and then bam. Not every situation works like that though. Like keys, like hash table keys, you do want to do that because it won't work any other way. If I have a PS custom object or hash table, and I want to be able to access it, if I say
I'd have to prepare an example of that. But what happens is if you say prefix equals table.keys, well, what happens is prefix will become an array of 1 rather than an array of all that. So what you have to do is that. And then you can start to call it by like prefix 4. And then it'll pull up the 4th entry. But if you do it this way, it'll pull it up as an object instead of an array, which kind of frustrates the living crap out of me, but that's okay. It just means that as long as you place things correctly when you're building this stuff, then you eliminate problems each and every time. And once you write something, then you never have to write it again. Unless, of course, if you're like me and you want to be able to, let's say I wanted to like do all of this without having so many different variables. That's the challenge here, is that's next to impossible without adding in a whole bunch of strings, or just make the whole document a whole set of static strings. Well, when you do that, you're looking at basically the same thing as a kernel type definition or something, where you don't want anything in there to change, because the logic that goes into those type definitions, it's always going to be the same so long as the operating system is the same. So like if Microsoft were to release Windows 11 or 12 or whatever, well, they're sure as shit not going to go ahead and remove all the components that made Windows 10 work, because if they want anything from Windows 10 to be able to work on Windows 11, they want the users to actually use the new operating system. Well, they have to make it backward compatible. You can't make something brand new that's not backward compatible with the things that everybody uses, because guess what? People have spent a lot of time and effort and energy and money and resources into making these applications. So you have to be considerate of things that may have existed before you did or your efforts did, and as such, there's quite a steep learning curve to all this stuff. But as far as this specific use case scenario here, I'm trying to make this a little bit more static to build, or dynamic to build. When you use a PS custom object and you want to add things to it, you can't. This is the static way of doing that. But if you want to add it like dynamically, then what you do is say layout, add member. Here, let me go into a different tab here. Oh, crap. So add member, member type, note property. Probably want to use no properties because it makes it, I don't know, it's sort of like a hash table and an array at the same time when you use no properties. And no properties are great because they don't actually move any of the data around. Unlike, most of the stuff doesn't move the data around, but when you use a command, then it has to access what that command does. So side point, what I wanted to say is add member type no property name. And here's the thing, you can add a hash table to it, but you have to have the hash table calculated first and then tie it to a variable and then put it in. So let's say stuff and then value. We'll say that the value is going to be this string right here. Say array equals that. If you want to make it a static string, then you can do that. what the hell? Oh, gotta do that. Yeah. So what that does is it makes an array, but it's a static array. And then say layout. Now you can declare an empty PS custom object. Let's say you want the title to be stuff table, I guess, whatevs. Now if I go and I hit layout, well, now all that stuff is going to be under layout.stuff. But here's the problem with that is if I wanted to choose anything from that component, I can't choose the line because guess what? It's trying to select everything as a string. So I mean, if you know what the substring is all the way across, I guess you could do it that way, but that's kind of a pain in the neck to do it that way. Which is kind of the reason why I've been doing this is you can use this, but it turns it all into a string, and it's kind of a pain in the neck because if you want to access any individual line, well, you can't. You would have to do something like this. I'm going to turn them all into strings. But another problem that you face with that is the double quotes there. I found ways around having to have static strings by having nested single quotes, and it'll still read a variable if you have it in single quotes within double quotes. Unfortunately, any XML generation will include double quotes instead of single quotes. So like, let's say all of those variables seem to start with that, and that's what you saw in the previous thing there, schema. Well, now I can change all that to schema and then do it again here. So now I just made that legible and within the window here without changing stuff around, and then also if I included those other things that I did over here, I'm not going to echo that, but let's say I want to use the one that I was editing here. As you can see, I could very easily, actually, why don't I do that? I don't think that's going to work, unfortunately. So now that replaced all of the double quotes, rather than me having to go through everything there. And now I can add the double quotes on the outsides of everything. This isn't the right one. Why? No. Damn it. Oh, it saved it as a PS1. Damn it. Well, I guess it's not that big of a deal. PS1 is basically like a text file. I don't see any problem with that. Alright, so now layout equals layout dot replace so alright, let me talk a little bit about cloning here. So what I'm doing here is if I just type that out into the console, it's not going to change the actual variable unless I am selecting something from that variable, and then I am cloning it basically, and then replacing it. So as long as the equation goes this way and it's complete and the operating system is able to work with that, what happens is it won't change this variable until this is all done, which means that you can in fact use a variable to redeclare itself, because it's, I don't know, I can't explain why that's the case, but it is. So here, now I have everything that I was working on before. Now let's say for each item in layout, what I want to do is insert quotes. So let's say D equals so I'm doing that again. Why is that showing up? Didn't do it exactly the way I wanted it to, but that's okay. That'll work. Just gotta remove the space. So now I can put this here. yes, I do this manually sometimes because sometimes I notice things that need to be fixed as well. Alright. Now I can actually include some stuff here. I'm just going to type it out to the array anyway. Well, that's not what I want. Oh, I see. Well, that's a pain in the neck, but whatever. So now I can put in the variables that I came up with and make sure that alright, so that's good. I'm going to put that there. Now, when you start to do stuff in quotes like that, you have to use that. There's no way around that. Alright, so now that should work, but also there's a lot of other redundant stuff here that I still need to fix, right? So I'm going to say schema. And then I could replace anything in this with a variable if I want to. What I really want to do is here, let's programmatically re-include this stuff. So 0, 2, 4. Actually, I'm going to use a regular for each loop here. Now for each I, 0, 2, and 4, what I'm going to do is 0, 2, 4. So I have to do it twice. I have to nest it. So I have to use a different variable there. It's probably not going to come out the way I want it to, but I got to test it and see which way to amend it. Then let's say start equals that. So yeah, you can type, you can cast for each to a variable like that. Start backwards. So I want this to do is J and then that I. So boom, there we go. Now I have to do this business again on this side. So now I have that. Boom. So just by using programmatical looping and things of that nature, and manipulating the objects in question, now I have a way of restoring whatever program that I wanted on there. But also, there's a case to be made here that that I put that in there, or maybe that's the default value, but maybe I want it to be something other than that. So that's where coming up with ways to produce hash tables dynamically makes sense, because instead of doing that right there, what I could have done was this. All I'm going to do is this. And then remove all of those. And now it'll do the same exact thing. See? I'll only do a clear screen so you can see what's actually happening. I'm going to remove that. So let me talk about how this all works. The schema is a pretty redundant variable, so we put that in there, there. There are some other variables I could also change as well, like that only comes up once, but the word layout comes up a lot, so I could take that out too. Might not want to change the case, that might be a case sensitive one there, so I would leave that alone. But all these words that say layout, or what I could do is the problem is you can make an array that has either the lowercase or the uppercase, but you're duplicating the variable that way. You could go like pretty far into what I'm doing here if you want to, but the case that I'm trying to make here is that so long as I have all this set up correctly, then it'll pop out the correct size of the array. Or let's say that we want the count of the start there. So start.count equals that. So count 9. So we say if count is greater than, I don't know, 1, then count equals 0. You have to use that -1 in case you haven't seen my other video, because the count, there is 9 items, but it starts on 0, so you have to subtract 1 in order for it to work correctly. Let's say that it was only 1 item. Then you have to make sure that that count isn't an array, and that's just 1. You actually put like any number in, and then do this business here. And now whatever number of items are in there, it will repeat that many number of times. So when it's multiple, you use that and it expands it into an array. And then when you only use a single number, then it will only do that business once. But just to show you how that works. That's not working. Oh, because I didn't put the commas on the end. So when you work with an array, you have to add a comma on the end of each string. that might be a problem, actually. I might have to do that outside. I might have to do that outside of the string there, otherwise it won't work. I don't think it's going to work. Crap. Once I do this. I think that'll work. Yeah, no, it didn't. Crap. Damn. So now what I can do is this. I still don't think that's going to work. Crap. This is why sometimes it's easier just to turn it into a string. Yes, it's not gonna work. Damn it. I don't know why it's doing that. So, yeah, no. I mean, you could pass that off and it'll work, but I don't think anyone wants to see it that way. Still not working. This is pain to try to figure out. I know it's got to be closed there. Oh, that's a problem. Or what I could do is I'm going to end the video for now just because I don't want people to see the hours of frustration that I go through trying to figure out a creative way to do these things. But as you can see, if I can get it to work, then it's going to save quite a bit of time because, hey, look, I used math to be able to recreate all of that, which, you know, that's the default profile right there. So no big deal. Nobody's gonna give me a Nobel Peace Prize for coming up with a way to recreate that. But being able to do this dynamically, well, that might be a different story. Even then, I probably still won't get a Nobel Peace Prize, but, you know, to each their own. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. I'll likely be uploading more videos at a increased rate, mainly because I feel like this is the type of stuff people want to see, especially fellow programmers who might have been bashing their head into the walls just as much as I have been. You know, I think that the more often that I put this stuff out there, they can start to relate or understand, or, you know, maybe even pitch in and help. Who knows? Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful day.